Good afternoon and welcome to this week's Sunday session with Sash. I'm glad you're back, and if you're new, welcome and thank you for joining us. This week we are going to be discussing anxiety. Last week we discussed depression. For whatever reason, if you missed last week's session, no worry. Check it out on the YouTube channel. And be sure to subscribe, that way you get notifications when the sessions are available. Be sure to comment and like the video. Like with every session, I'm going to start off with a medical disclaimer. As some of you may know, I am in pursuit of my master's degree in professional counseling. I have the professional knowledge and the ability to provide diagnosis under the supervision of a licensed counselor. Statements made in these sessions are general information and not personalized. For more in-depth information about personal treatment that you may need, please consult your family doctor or a local counselor. If you need assistance finding these resources, I am able to help. Please leave a comment below of any resource you are interested in, or you can email me or follow me on Facebook or other social media and message me. My social media and email will be linked below. Due to this being an informative platform, I am not responsible for any actions taken because of these sessions. If you or someone you know is in need of immediate help, please call 911. All right, thank you for listening to my disclaimer, and let's get started with this week's session. So, again, I stated that this week's session will be focused on anxiety. Just like last week when we did depression, we will go through the diagnostic criteria first, then we will go through some coping skills to help, and then lastly we'll go over questions that you guys left me, which I thank you for, and then we will wrap it up. Okay, so the diagnostic criteria for anxiety, and more specifically this will be in relation to generalized anxiety disorder. As I mentioned last week, there are several different disorders in specific categories. Like we covered major depressive disorder. There are other depressive disorders that are similar, just like anxiety. There's generalized anxiety disorder, and then there are a whole bunch of other different type of anxiety disorders like phobias or social anxiety. But for the sake of everything being general, we will just go over the most general diagnosis under the category. So for this week, that's generalized anxiety disorder. So the diagnostic criteria for generalized anxiety is that someone excessively worries more days than often for at least 6 months about events or activities such as performance. So somebody might worry about their performance in school or their performance at work. And what makes it different is it's not the typical worry like, I hope I did good on a test. It's excessive and difficult to control the worry. It's a constant thought and it disrupts their daily lives. Worry is associated with 3 or more adults and 1 children. So like the things that I'm going to be listing, you have to have 3 of them to be, if you're an adult, to be diagnosed with generalized anxiety, and only 1 of them if you're a child to be diagnosed. So you're restless or on edge, you're easily fatigued, you have difficult concentrating, you're irritable, you have muscle tension, and sleep disturbance. So that goes along with, you have to have 3 of those if you're an adult, plus the excessive worrying for more days than often for at least 6 months, or 1 of those and the excessive worrying if you're a child. The worrying, like I said before, has to cause clinical distress or impairment. And what that means, we touched on it a little last week, is that it stops you from doing your daily activities. It stops you from going to work. It stops you from eating well, sleeping well. It stops you from caring about your personal hygiene, avoiding social activities, things of that nature. Just like depression, the anxiety cannot be caused by a substance use or another mental or medical condition. So, and I mentioned it last week as well, that someone who has a substance abuse disorder will first be diagnosed with that and seek treatment for that. And then they will seek treatment for their co-occurring disorders, which could be anxiety, depression, PTSD, etc. Medical condition wise, so you have cancer. That's the best example I can think of, because it's a big change and it's a chronic condition, and you're worrying about your cancer. That is normal. And a doctor or a medical health professional will help you determine when the anxiety about it becomes unhealthy. Not saying they won't help you through what you're going through when you're diagnosed with cancer or a chronic medical condition. Just for it to be generalized anxiety, it cannot be related to a medical condition. And it cannot be explained by another mental health condition as well. So, for example, a lot of people who have schizophrenia tend to display anxiety symptoms. The person would be diagnosed with schizophrenia first, and then their comorbid or their co-occurring diagnosis may be anxiety, but it's less likely to be generalized anxiety. It might be anxiety not otherwise specified, or anxiety with a depressive component. Some other symptoms of anxiety are that you notice being jittery or being very tense, shaky. Internally, you can feel muscle soreness, and that's just from the muscle tension from you clenching all the time. When I worry, sometimes I clench my jaw, and then later my jaw is sore, and that's again because I'm tensing it all the time, and then when I do relax, it's sore. So internally, you may feel some muscle soreness when you have anxiety. The rate of diagnosis for this condition is that it's 9% prevalent among children, and it's 0.9% prevalent among children displaying it within a 12-month period, and it's 9% more prevalent in adults displaying it over a 12-month period. Women are twice more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety than men. And something I would like to say to this that I didn't mention last time is one of the reasons that women can be diagnosed more with anxiety is definitely professional opinion. Therapy is not foolproof. There are therapists out there that have their own bias. These rates come from research. There are researchers out there that have their own bias. There are exams and assessments that you complete that can be biased towards gender. Now, what I will say is now that we have more technology and we're more aware of this bias, there have been updated assessments so that when we take them, they're not skewed to be more favorable to women versus men. And there's a lot of research going on in the psychological community to show that a lot of disabilities or mental illnesses really don't have a gender differentiation, but this is the history that we have, and so because of that, it is put into the medical books like the diagnostics manual. So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying if it seems biased that some of the disorders that I talk about, I say that women are more likely to have them. It's just what research has shown. Hopefully over the years, maybe we will see a decrease in that. Unlike depression, where there was like a gap where you're more likely to have it in early adult and then late adult, for anxiety, it peaks in around middle age. So if we think with depression, we said 18 to 29 and then 60 and up. So from 29 to 60 is usually when anxiety spikes. And if you think about that, just like depression, you've had some major changes in your life that could cause worry. You know, your kids are starting school, maybe you're changing your job, maybe, you know, your parents are getting older now, and you're thinking about what life will hold if you have to take care of them. There could be a number of things going on in your life at that period of time. Speaking on the bias again, those of European descent are more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety. This speaks a lot to cultural biases. For example, in the African American community, there is a huge bias against seeking treatment for your mental health. If you've ever heard of the saying, what happens at home stays at home, that has led, not that statement, but that mindset has led a lot of African Americans to not seek treatment for their mental health, and it can result in outputs in other ways. So again, this is just what the research has shown over the history of diagnosing people with this disorder and other mental health disorders, is that those of European descent are more likely to be diagnosed. And I'm just giving you the background of where that bias can come from. Anxiety has about a 33% genetic predisposition, so it's a little less than depression with the 40%. Some of the specificities include anxiety with harm avoidance, adversity. Usually somebody who has anxiety will be aversive or very overprotective. And again, then you can have anxiety due to a medical condition. That's a specific diagnosis. Substance abuse induced anxiety, social anxiety, OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder is also a form of anxiety. And I do have a week set aside to go over OCD and how that will cause anxiety, so I don't want to get too much into that. PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder is also a form of anxiety or has anxiety characteristics. Adjustment disorder is usually a diagnosis given to children or younger adults, and it's less severe than generalized anxiety, but it can have anxious qualities, anxiety with depressive traits, bipolar disorder, and then you can have anxiety with psychosis. Anxiety has a very high comorbidity with depression. Usually those diagnosed with depression are diagnosed with anxiety and vice versa. Okay, that was the diagnostic criteria and some of the specifications about anxiety. Now we will go into coping strategies. Similar to depression, and it will probably come up when we talk about all of these mental health diagnoses, is that taking time for yourself is a huge coping skill when you have mental illness or you're going through a rough time in your life. Taking time to take care of yourself, or just not like be to yourself, but do things that you enjoy, will help improve your mental health. Take a step back from the things that give you stress. So if you are noticing that you're more irritable at work and you can't focus, and like everything is getting on your nerves, and then you're taking it home and you're yelling at your kids because your job is annoying you, take a mental health day. Most jobs have come into the society where they're more acceptable of you calling in and say, hey, I need a mental health day. Do that for yourself. Or for me personally, after getting a new position, I decided that one thing I'm going to vow to myself is at least once a month, if possible, I'm going to schedule a day off, a random day, and that will be my mental health day. And the reason why is because we can get so caught up, and then months will go by and we'll realize we haven't had a day off in months, years, weeks. So if you have PTO, if that's something your job offers, go 4 weeks out and just schedule a random day, a random Tuesday. Don't schedule anything else for that day. Don't plan to clean your whole house, nothing. And have that day to yourself to do whatever makes you happy. If that's laying in your bed and watching YouTube for 4 hours, or if it's going to the nail salon to get your nails done, whatever. Take time to yourself. In the moment when you are having anxiety, a good coping skill is to take deep breaths and count to 10 slowly. Focusing on your breath takes your mind away from whatever is bothering you. And that is also a good coping strategy for depression, as well as if you have anger. It just separates your mind from whatever it's currently thinking about, and it makes you think about something that's natural, that you don't have to exert much energy to do, which is take a deep breath. For people who have anxiety, one of the key things that Freud said that probably led to them having anxiety is that they are anal retentive. So basically meaning you need to control every aspect of your life or every aspect of a situation. So in order to help cope with that anxiety, take a step back and accept that you cannot control everything. If you would like something to go a certain way, but then something happens, understand, like accepting that that's life and you're not able to control everything, including other people's actions, can help you reduce anxiety. Get involved, promote a network to help you get away from your problems. Most of the time, giving back to other people helps us feel better as well as about ourselves, and helps increase those happy drugs we were talking about in your brain. So, do a charity event, or like I said, build your social network and have people that you can just hang around and talk to. Or, if there's something you really want to change in your life, focus on that, but in a less anal way. Like we said, don't try to control the whole situation, just go with the flow. With any mental health or any goal, the important aspect is to take small steps in addressing your problems. If you have anxiety today, it's not going to go away tomorrow, and don't expect it to. Just take one day at a time, one step at a time, one goal at a time. And when you reach that goal, reward yourself. It doesn't have to be a physical thing, but give yourself some affirmations like, I'm so proud of you. You went to work every day this week and not one time did you get upset, or not one time did you cuss anybody out. If that's your goal, reward yourself for reaching those milestones. Learn what triggers your anxiety. So if you're fine 1 minute and then next minute you're like, your heart is racing, your mind is racing, take a step back and think about what just happened. Was it something somebody said? Did I enter a place Places, smells, words, actions can trigger anxiety. Thoughts, just random thoughts, can trigger anxiety as well. So, you're sitting there writing a paper, and then all of a sudden it pops in your head that rent is due in 14 days, and then you start spiraling out. You keep thinking about, well, I don't get paid until this day, and then that means my rent's gonna be late, and then if my rent's late, then I'm not gonna have enough money for gas, and if I don't have money for gas, I'm not gonna be, and then it starts going. So take a step back and think, like, okay, what triggered you? Thinking about rent being due. Maybe a solution to that would be every 2 weeks, sit down and do a budget. That way, when that thought does pop in your head, you're like, oh, but I already have that planned out. No worries. So learn what your triggers are, and then take small steps to reduce those triggers in your life. Try grounding yourself. So grounding yourself is very important for when you're having a panic attack. A panic attack can feel like a heart attack. It can feel like you're gasping for air. It can feel like you're going to faint. Your body enters a fight or flight mode. And again, your muscles all tense up. Your adrenaline starts pumping. Your heart gets to racing. You're ready to either take off or fight whatever thing is coming your way. So in order to stop that process, which it is an innate process in our brain, you want to try to ground yourself. And you ground yourself by using your senses. So you sit there and say, close your eyes and say, I smell coffee. I smell the lotion on my hands. I smell whatever you smell. Or I can hear the fan. I can hear the people behind me. I can feel my desk in front of me. And as you slowly go through the steps, your heart should start to slow down, your adrenaline should start to slow down, and your body should start to calm down. It's making us realize that we're not in a dangerous situation. We don't have to be in that fight or flight mode. One of the things that I was taught in school, and it helped a lot of people, is to count down. Say 5 things you can see. Name 4 things you can touch. Think about 3 things you can smell. Name 1 thing that you feel. And to go on and on. A lot of people use things. So if you have like a stuffed animal, or a really soft blanket, or something that feels rigid, you could sit there and rub it and think about the ridges, or think about the texture of what you're feeling. Again, it helps your body realize that you're not in attack mode. And if you're new, the reason why these coping strategies don't include medication is, 1, I'm not a doctor, so I can't prescribe medication. And 2, I like to take a non-medication approach to mental illness. In the previous session, I did mention that I do understand that some people need medication because their case is more severe, or they need help coping right away, and that is okay. And I'm all for that, and for doctors prescribing it. But because I'm a therapist, I think about the other side of it, which is the non-medication part. All right, now we're going to go through the questions that you guys asked me. The first one is, what are some triggers for mental health episodes? So this is very individualized. Everybody's triggers are different, and we mentioned it a little bit when we went through the coping strategies. So if you know that you are triggered for not knowing what's going to go on in the future, it may be helpful to have a planner and sit down every so often and plan out the next couple of days, or at least write down what's going to happen in the next couple of days, so that you already have it prepped in your mind. And when you're trying to think about tomorrow and you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, it doesn't bring you anxiety. Again, with that, you have to keep in mind, even if you write a note on the side of your planner, you cannot control everything. If that's something you have to read every day, because planning out your day is fine, but understanding that life will still happen, so sometimes your day will not go as planned. What is your personal view on mental health? This is a very long, or can be a very long answer, but in short, my personal view on mental health is that everybody has mental health. Having a mind is something that everybody has. So keeping it healthy is something that everybody should engage in. Not everybody has mental health issues or it has a mental health diagnosis, but we all experience things in life that are similar to the mental illnesses. For example, I'm pretty sure you can think of a time when you were very anxious about something that was about to happen. Or you can think of a time when you were depressed, maybe after you broke up with somebody, or you lost a good friend, or your dog died. So I think it's important for everybody to realize that these are things that everyone goes through. So to not feel like you're alone and that you're the only person going through this and there's nothing anybody can do to help or understand what you're going through. My also view on mental health, I kind of mentioned, was like a non-medication approach, but that's more just because of my professional knowledge and not being able to diagnose medicine. I feel like mental health is a journey. There's not one cure, there's not one answer, there's not one thing that you can do. Everybody is different, and what worked for you 3 months ago may be different than what works for you today. So it's a constant journey and it's ever changing. I wish mental health was more inclusive. As I'm becoming a professional, I see more people of color in the mental health field, and it really excites me, because even though I went to college a short time ago, I went to undergrad 9 years ago, it even looked different then. I didn't have any professors of color. There was one at my whole university in that field. Everybody was a woman, which is typical, which is different than when it started. When psychology started, all the professors were men. So that's a change that I enjoyed. But I definitely wish that the mental health field was more inclusive. And then I also wish that people with disabilities were viewed as people, just people, and that their diagnosis didn't define them. I could go on and on, but I'll stop there. That is some of my personal views on mental health. Question number 3 is how to not burn out in the mental health field and have a work-life balance. One of the important things that I learned over time is that work is work and home is home. So if you're not on call or an emergency personnel, when you go home, leave work at work. Do not bring it into your house. Now, with my husband, I may discuss if I had a bad day, but then after I vent, that's it. We don't have hour-long conversations about work. Once we're home, we're home. Now I am on call now, so I do have to carry like my phone around with me. But again, I make sure that I have that separation. And then, like I said, I try to schedule those mental health days, and I have a really great support system, so I'm able to schedule those mental health days, as well as, not be a mom, but have someone to care for my child speak children to existence, but child, so that I can, focus on me. So definitely the me time, leaving work at work and home is home, never crossing the two. Also, if you feel like you're not having a work-life balance, like you're trying, but for whatever reason, your job is flowing into your work and your personal issues are affecting your work, that's when it's time to sit down and realize what needs to change. How do mental health and addiction impact each other? How can you cope with both at once and become your best self? This can be a very long question as well, so we'll probably go over 30 minutes today, and I apologize. If you're interested in hearing the answers to those questions, please stay here. If this is enough for you today, I appreciate you very much, and I will see you next week. But for these questions, the first one is, how does mental health and addiction impact each other? And I have chills right now because the impact is tremendous. A lot of people who have substance abuse disorder or use substances are usually trying to drown out their mental health issues. They don't have the coping skills to healthy process what is going on in their life. For example, if they lose their job and they don't have those coping skills embedded in them, someone can easily start drinking. And then when they notice that when they're drinking, they're not thinking about, or they're not depressed about not having a job, then the drinking increases because our bodies adapt. So we increase tolerance. And then that's when it goes from having, 3 drinks a day to a bottle a day to 3 bottles a day, to the point where it's very dangerous. And then it also can start out the other way. Someone can be interested in using a drug like meth, and they take it, and then it makes them depressed or anxious. But the drug is so addicting that they continue to take it, and then it's ruining their life as well. They stop going to work, and then they're depressed about their bills, and they take the medicine, and then it's just a cycle. And sometimes there's no beginning to end. It's kind of the phenomenon of the chicken before the egg. Sometimes you can't tell what came first. Sometimes it is the mental health, sometimes it's the substance abuse. Maybe they both started at the same time. It's really hard to determine. The next part of the question was, how can you cope with both at once? It's very important that if you or someone you know is using substances, so substance can be anything from pills to cigarettes to alcohol to weed, anything that is used in excess to the point that it impacts their life. And we'll go through substance abuse in one of the later weeks, but just a snapshot. It's the use of any substance that is either illegal or it's in excess to the point where it affects their life. The most important thing is, if that is you or someone you know, is to get help from a substance abuse counselor or your doctor. The medical approach is always first, because if they have been using a substance for so long to the point that their body is dependent, if they just try cold turkey and stop, they will become very ill. Yes, you will go through withdrawal, but sometimes the withdrawal can be deadly, point blank period, especially if you're not monitored, if you're not given fluids, if you're not giving other medications to not make other parts of your body stop working. So the most important thing is to get them medical help. once they're withdrawal or they have a medication in their system that can help them stop using the substance, then counseling is usually referred. And then that's when, like, someone like me will help them gain coping skills of the issues that are going on in their lives, the things that they want to change, so that they naturally can change those things and learn those coping skills, so that if they're in that situation again, they use the coping skills instead of the substance to make it better. Again, I could go on and on about that specific question. It's a very good question. Like, I still have chills because I know a lot of people try to say, or the world is saying, that right now we have an opioid crisis and a mental health crisis, and the truth is that we've always had this. It's just the prevalence of it and this may sound wrong, but the crossover of it. It has always been an issue in other cultures, and now it's becoming an issue in our the main culture that is viewed, and so now it's becoming more serious. Substances have always been around. We're just now more aware of what they do and how they affect your mental health. Yeah, I'm going to stop there because, again, I have chills and I could go and go and go. So that is all that I have for you this week. Again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I thank you for giving me questions, and I hope to see you next week. Please do not forget to subscribe and leave a comment below of questions you would like to see in the upcoming week. I tend to like to leave you off with a goal. So my goal for you for next week is that if you or somebody in your family suffers from substance abuse, please reach out for them to get help. They may hate you in the moment. They will love you when they come through. It may separate you in that moment, but please, if they suffer from substance abuse, please get them help. All right, thank you. I'll see you next week.